The Minnesota Vikings versus Seattle Seahawks Week 13 matchup. Both of these teams are looking in pretty good shape in terms of making it into the playoffs, unless one of these two teams have a big drop-off and just go on an absolute losing streak. Both of these teams are pretty much in the playoffs. Now, what this game is big is when determining where will these teams play when the playoffs begins. Will one of these teams be playing during the wild card, or will one of these teams end up having a first round bye? So that's why this game is very important. So Minnesota is coming into this game 8-3. They're going to be on the road facing Seattle Seahawks, who are 9-2 on the season. Now, both of these two teams are competing along with the rest of the NFC to see who's going to end up having the home field advantage throughout the playoffs, because the 49ers have the best overall record in the NFC. They only have one loss, but Seattle isn't that far behind them. And Minnesota isn't completely out that conversation as well, when you got New Orleans and you got Green Bay and you got them as well. So this game is going to be big in determining who can end up getting one of those 1 or 2 seeds. Now, if Minnesota wins this game, then they will be competing with the Green Bay Packers and the Saints and everybody else to try to see if they can get that number 2 seed. Now, if the Seattle Seahawks win this game, then they have to play the San Francisco 49ers in the next couple of weeks in a rematch. And if Seattle's able to win that game versus the 49ers and beat them and just sweep the season series with the 49ers, then they can end up having the number 1 seed. So this is a big game in determining the seeding for the NFC playoffs when it comes to these two teams. Now, both of these two teams have similar identities in terms of what they want to do on the offensive side of the ball. Both of these teams, in my opinion, are one-first teams. They pretty much, if you give them the opportunity to run the football the whole entire game, they're going to run the football the whole entire game. And both of these teams have pretty good quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins, I've seen a lot of people making arguments of why Kirk Cousins is in the MVP discussion. And also a lot of people say that Russell Wilson is the front runner for NFL MVP, along with Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson. So, I mean, both of these two teams are very similar on the offense. Both of these two teams like to run the football, and if you give them an opportunity to run the football, they'll do it. But not only are they good running the football, but they also can make you pay throwing the football. Russell Wilson, we don't really need to give Russell Wilson an introduction. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, one of the best dual threat quarterbacks of this generation. You got Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins has played very well this season. A big reason why he's played very well this season is because they can run the football. Dalvin Cook is one of the best running backs in all of football. Now, Dalvin Cook had an off year last year, but this year, with how good this offensive line has played for Minnesota, he's been right on track. And a lot of people have been making some arguments for why Dalvin Cook could end up winning NFL MVP. And early on in the season, we saw the hype for Dalvin Cook winning MVP. It was real. And same thing for Christian McCaffrey, but the Dalvin Cook and Christian McCaffrey hype train for them winning NFL MVP hasn't left yet, but it has died down with how good Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson have been playing. But we have the opportunity to see two very good offenses compete. And they have very similar identities in my viewpoint. Both of these teams are pretty similar in how they want to run their offense. They pretty much want to run the football first, and then they want to try to get the passing game going as well. But I think the two things that separates these two teams, even though these teams are very similar on the offensive side of the ball, their defenses. Now, Seattle's defense, their secondary has struggled. Seattle's defense has been pretty much up and down. I mean, some weeks they have pretty good defensive performances, and some weeks they have some bad performances. But Seattle's secondary this year has not been that good. They're one of the worst teams in the NFL when it comes to stopping the pass. They're pretty much near the bottom of the league when it comes to passing yards per game allowed. They're between 27th or 29th, I believe, looking at the stats. So, I mean, if you're Seattle, they're solid. They're pretty solid to stop the run. They're pretty much middle of the pack when it comes to stopping the run. But, I mean, when it comes to stopping the pass, Minnesota, with the way Kirk Cousins and this offense has been playing over the last couple of weeks, I'm looking at this Seattle Seahawks secondary, and I'm looking at a secondary that has to be able to find a way to stop this passing attack of this Minnesota Vikings team. And although Minnesota can run the football, if Adam Thielen's able to play in this game, then not only do you have to worry about Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, but you also got to worry about Kyle Rudolph and Earl Smith, because those guys have been getting involved in the offense a lot more lately over the last couple of weeks. So not only do you have to worry about the threat of Dalvin Cook running the football, but you also got to worry about the passing attack as well. And the same thing for the Minnesota Vikings defense. Now, although Minnesota's defense with their secondary isn't as bad as Seattle, their secondary is pretty much middle of the pack. They're 20th in the NFL in pass yards per game allowed, and their secondary has had their fair share of struggles as well. But the thing that separates this Minnesota Vikings defense from Seattle's defense, in my opinion, is how talented they are. Now, Seattle's defense, they had Jadeveon Clowney, they have Bobby Wagner, they have some talented guys, but this Minnesota Vikings defense is star-studded. They have a lot of big-name players on the defensive side of the ball for the Minnesota Vikings, and I think that's what separates the Minnesota Vikings defense versus Seattle's defense, because Seattle's defense is inconsistent versus Minnesota's defense. Their defense is pretty consistent most of the time. You got guys like Darnell Hunter, you got guys like Harrison Smith. They got a lot of good guys on that defense for the Minnesota Vikings. So my question for this game is going to be, who's going to be able to establish the run game and who's going to be able to control time possession? That's what I'm looking at in a game like this, and also which team is going to be able to get pressure on the opposing team's quarterback. And now when we look at my keys to victory, what both of these teams be able to do to win this game, for Seattle, they have to be able to convert on third down. Now, over the last 3 games, Seattle has converted on third downs 37% of the time over the last 3 games. So their overall percentage for converting on third down during the main stretch of the season has been 40%. But over the last 3 games, they have kind of struggled converting on third downs, converting on 37% of the time. So if you're Seattle, you're facing a pretty good defense in Minnesota that's very good in giving you up off the field on third downs. Now, for Seattle to have success on third downs, I think a big part of that is going to be their ability to run the football. Rashad Penny had a big game, has had pretty good games over the last couple of weeks. Chris Carson has also had a pretty good season. So you got 2 dynamic halfbacks. So I think a key for Seattle to be able to convert on third down in this game is going to be their ability to run the football, and also the threat of Russell Wilson and his ability to run the football as well. The next thing Seattle has to be able to do is they have to be able to stop Dalvin Cook. I mean, look, I think what Minnesota likes to do on the offensive side of the ball is they like to run the football. And if you're able to stop Dalvin Cook, then you put more pressure on Minnesota to throw the football. Now, Minnesota can beat you throwing the football and running the football as well, which makes the Minnesota offense so difficult to stop. But Dalvin Cook, their identity for Minnesota is they want to run the football. So if you stop Dalvin Cook, you get Minnesota off track from what the identity of their football team is. Although they can throw the football, they want to run the football. They want to tire out your defense, and they want to control the time possession for most of the time. So if you're able to stop Dalvin Cook, then you're able to help out your defense if you're Seattle. By now you're able to take away the run game. So now you can just strictly focus on the passing game, and you can tee off your pass rushers and try to get some pressure on Kirk Cousins and try to help out this secondary that has been struggling throughout most of the season. Now, what Seattle has to be, what the Minnesota Vikings have to be able to do to win this game is they got to get stops in the red zone. Now, Minnesota has a pretty good red zone defense. They're facing one of the best red zone offenses in the NFL, because not only does Seattle have the ability to run the football inside the red zone with Penny and Carson, but you also got to account for Russell Wilson, and you also got to account for Josh Gordon. Now, Josh Gordon is a big X factor in this game, and the reason why is because his size and his speed and his athleticism is going to be something that Minnesota's going to have to find a way to figure out how to stop, because Josh Gordon's size in the red zone makes him an ideal red zone target. You can also say the same thing for DK Metcalf. So what separates Seattle from the rest of the teams in the NFL is that they have a lot of size and a lot of speed inside that red zone. So when you look at the 2 wide receivers that they're going to have on the outside for Minnesota, you got to try to stop DK Metcalf. You got to try to stop Josh Gordon. And both of those guys both of those guys are enormously huge for wide receivers. So good luck trying to stop those guys inside the red zone if they try to do a back shoulder or a fade route to those guys in the red zone. Not only do you have to worry about them, but Seattle is also able to incorporate their tight ends in the red zone as well. So Minnesota, they're going to have to be able to get stops in the red zone and get the Seattle Seahawks kicking field goals instead of touchdowns. The last thing they have to be able to do is they have to be able to get pressure on Russell Wilson. Now, this offensive line for Seattle has been pretty good, but if you're able to get pressure on Russell Wilson, you're able to stop this running attack like what Minnesota has to be able to do. It's not listed. I forgot to put that there. But Minnesota also has to be able to stop the run. The reason I didn't add that was because I didn't want to sound redundant. But both of these teams need to be able to stop the run. So whichever team is able to stop the run and force the opposing team to go to the passing attack has a good chance to win this game. But I think if Minnesota is able to stop the running game of Seattle, they put a lot more pressure on Russell Wilson because Seattle's offensive line isn't as good as Minnesota's offensive line. So I think Minnesota has a good chance to win this game if they're able to get pressure on Russell Wilson and get Seattle to a bend in the run game and strictly rely on Russell Wilson to win the game, which he is able to do. But my question is going to be is, can that offensive line of Seattle hold up? Now, team that I'm going with to win this game, this was very, very tough. Both of these teams can win this game. So basically, this is a coin flick, but I'm going to take Minnesota to win this game. I'm going to take Minnesota to win this game because, look, Seattle's defense, their secondary has struggled. And although Minnesota's secondary has struggled, their secondary is middle of the pack. Seattle's inability to stop the passing game is going to be a big reason why I'm taking Minnesota to win this game. Because, look, there's no way you can convince me that Seattle's secondary is not going to be a glaring weakness that Minnesota is going to be able to expose. And the way that Minnesota has been able to dominate teams, not only run the football or pass the football as well, it concerns me for Seattle's secondary. Because Seattle's secondary has not been good this season. So I think Kirk Cousins in Minnesota is going to have a pretty good day and a pretty good outing. And I'm going to take Minnesota to win this game because of Seattle's inability to stop the pass. So I think Minnesota wins this game 27-24 is my final score prediction. So let me know who you guys have winning this game down in the comment section down below. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more NFL videos and content. And thanks for watching.